What is the biggest waste of money that you've ever witnessed being spent? Story 1. An acquaintance of mine received $350,000 for a work-related accident that messed up his body pretty good. He lives in a broken-down trailer that smells like sewage. His wife drives a piece of crap car, and the kids have an old PC, but mostly just spend time on the Xbox. As far as I know, he's blown most of it on casinos, beer, and drugs. I once worked in a small town that received huge amounts of money from the gas and oil fields. They had classrooms filled with unopened computers. They had a state-of-the-art auditorium, but nobody knew how to work any of the AV equipment, so they just had 2 speakers hooked up to a microphone. A friend of mine was an EE that worked in the oil fields, and when they saw what they were doing, he volunteered to help them figure out the AV stuff. So at least they got some use out of that, but a lot of things just sat and became obsolete, while the students didn't learn anything because nobody knew how to use the stuff that they spent the money on. Story 2. I work for a cell phone provider in North America and have seen some pretty outrageous purchases. But by far the worst was a pregnant woman, 6 months pregnant, came in and bought 2 64GB iPhone 5Ss with 2 cell phone plans that were more than $100 per month. At first I thought it was for her husband or something, but then she tells me, I'm not an iPhone person, but my psychic tells me that these 2 bundles of joy in me are, so please keep the boxes sealed. We want them to open them when they're born. She was buying iPhones for her unborn children and wanted to give the phones to them as presents for being born. You know, if I felt the compulsion to do something like this, I would at least have the decency to be embarrassed about it. What I don't get is these people who just flippantly announce their stupidity. Story 3. A former company I worked at spent $70,000 to hire a guy to come up with a mission statement. He worked for 6 months and wrote a single sentence the size of a paragraph that was incomprehensible. Our brand presence serves the ever-reaching goals of values with customer presence and obsequious delineation from where the core beliefs are born unto the service we provide for the external sequestrian of greatness among those who apply business excellence. Something like that, only about 4 times as long and with a lot of fancy punctuation. I always picture the guy in a striped shirt, a mask, a black beret, and a huge bag over his shoulder labeled Loot. What a crook. The whole debacle so outraged the stockholders that half the board of directors who approved the decision were fired. Yeah, this sort of thing doesn't seem all that uncommon. Especially like big companies, they often waste a ton of money on things that are massively overvalued, such as hiring fancy consultants for strategizing when they could probably have just figured it out themselves for much less. But they don't want to hire permanent employees and pay their benefits. And also those extravagant office spaces with all the fancy decorations that are just for show. That's why a lot of places are axing their office spaces, now that everybody's working from home more often. There's also the branding and advertising campaigns that really you could pour an infinite amount of money into, and it would still fall flat if the product itself isn't worth buying. Really, a good business focuses on the product first, and then the smoke and mirrors aren't necessary because the reputation speaks for itself. Story 4. My sister was visiting with her boyfriend and kids a couple years ago, and I went shopping with them. We were in a mall for less than an hour, and I watched her blow $2,000 in 3 stores, about $1,500 on clothing for herself, and $500 on clothing for her 2 kids. She completely emptied out their joint account, leaving no money for their remaining few days, without even batting an eye. She and I ended up having a falling out over it because her boyfriend had been asking for this $50 personalized hat since they flew in, and by the end of that hour, there was no money left to get it for him, and he made the majority of their money. Also, more recently, she spent over $1,000 renting out an entire club on a Friday night for her best friend's birthday, with food, and something like 8 people showed up. Being as frugal as I am, it's been difficult for me to listen to her stories of all the things she's bought for her and her friends when she can't even pay her bills, and is constantly calling our parents for money. Story 5. I had a friend in college who was a student loan abuser. When we first met our sophomore year, he had pretty much already worked his way through one loan, at which point he had decided to completely switch his major and basically restart college. His immediate family members had such bad credit that nobody was able to co-sign on a second student loan until another friend's mom generously stepped in and signed. The first thing he did with his new loan was buy a nice car, and I'm pretty sure he studied for another year before dropping out of college, completely broke with no degree to show for it. Student loans ain't nothing to mess with. Crap, I just feel sorry for the mom. Story 6. I used to work in a high-end electronics store. You guys think Monster Cable is a rip? I've sold people thousands of dollars worth of cables. The worst example I can think of is a guy that wanted high-end speaker cables for his rear channel speakers in a surround sound system. I think they wound up at $1,000 for each speaker. Total, we're talking about over $5,000 in cables. And those 10K plus HDMI cables that market themselves delivering better video quality, and they're not even full silver, just gold-plated. Digital cables have no difference, as long as the packages are delivered. Remember this, guys. Story 7. My city is spending $140,000 to rename the local airport after a president who isn't from here, and probably never visited here, because a couple of local radio DJs started a petition. I'm just glad they worked out all the important problems first. My old town decided that instead of holding a vote or write-in competition to come up with a slogan, they would pay a professional marketing firm 6 figures to design a slogan custom to our unique values. They came up with Rah Rah Town Name. Those 3 words cost us over $100,000 and became the slogan of a 100,000 plus person town. Story 8. My brother got a $4,000 tax return. He has 2 kids and lives with our parents. Instead of spending the money on like 7 months rent, he spent over $3,000 in parts on his Plymouth Neon. Body kit, turbocharger, intercooler, and rims on a 20-year-old piece of crap car. He just recently totaled it because he drives like a butthole. Oh, and he will be 31 years old next month. I'll never understand why people spend that kind of money modifying crappy cars rather than buying better ones in the first place. Okay, I kind of understand, but it's stupid behavior. Story 9. My ex-girlfriend made a lot of life decisions based on a psychic she knows in her home country. Apparently, her family have been consulting this woman for decades. This psychic knows her family so well that she can basically make lucky guesses, or just do cold readings, which her family then fits into their situation somehow. Usual psychic stuff. When we broke up, which wasn't the psychic's advice, but my common sense, her family prioritized consultations with this psychic as an important expenditure, as buying food. I don't know how much they spent on seeing this woman, and I hope I never know. Story 10. I used to work at a place that did FedEx. One day, a woman comes in with a Costco-sized case of Kraft dinner. She wanted to ship it overnight to France because her grandchildren wanted Kraft dinners, but they didn't have any in France. I informed her it would probably be cheaper to catch a red-eye in France and cook it for them herself. And she shrugged again and said, "But I have plans for supper tomorrow." So I look up the cost for her and inform her it comes to $2,800. She just shrugged and said, "Sure." Story 11. My ex-girlfriend had an obsession with phone psychics. Not all at once, but over the course of a single year, she spent over $15,000 getting life advice from multiple psychic lines. No one in her circle of family or friends could convince her to stop. I haven't spoken with her in a few years, but I wouldn't be surprised if she's still wasting her money on them. I had a friend with that problem too. Her issue was with a real live psychic who would make crap up and need money to make her charms and protections against evil. It was weird. Story 12. In Scandinavia, mostly Sweden, we have something called vasking. It's when you pay the bartender to pour a bottle of champagne in the sink just to show how wealthy you are. It's widely considered to be a butthole move, but I saw this one D-bag do it with a $2,000 bottle to impress some bimbos, with great success. I wanted Fedora to whip the crap out of him. I would be surprised if he bought the bottle, gave a glass to the girl, and the rest to other patrons who he didn't even know. That would be so much cooler than wasting it. Story 13. Freaking Starbucks, man. I worked there briefly in a suburb of Chicago and couldn't believe how much money people would blow there on a regular daily basis. It's one thing to treat yourself. It's one thing to grab your coffee every morning. It's a whole different animal when you, your husband, and your kids are getting venti frappuccinos every day. spending like $15 each time on total garbage. I heard a lot of, "I need my coffee," but come on, if you need your coffee, get a tall coffee for $1.35, not some sugary garbage for $5.75. Story 14. Was part of a company meeting for low-level managers at a famous golf resort. The thing easily cost $250,000. Can't imagine what they paid for the big boys. They're willing to write the check for these kinds of things because it's considered giving back. Plus, it's better than paying straight salary much of the time, because these things get written off as expenses, which employees don't get taxed for. Story 15. My former boss was putting in a backyard patio. She and her husband went to Home Depot in their Jaguar to buy some bricks for the patio. While there, they realized they didn't want to bring the bricks home in their Jag. They walked across the street to a Toyota dealer and bought an FJ Cruiser so they could bring their bricks home. They had no intention or need to buy a car. Oh yeah, they put the entire vehicle purchase on a credit card, and they kept the vehicle. Home Depot rents trucks for like $20 an hour. Story 16. An acquaintance of mine tends a bar. A couple came in on their anniversary and asked for the most expensive drink they had. He says a Dom Bomb, which isn't really a drink. He tells them it's a shot of Louis XIII dropped in Dom. They say, sure. At bar prices, this comes out to about $2,100 or so for the two drinks. No complaints, but crap, this must have been disgusting, not to mention the travesty of ruining two top-shelf drinks. Story 17. As an IT guy, it boggles my mind how many hundreds of thousands of dollars companies will shell out for software that clearly overlaps with something they already own but aren't utilizing, only to turn around, shelve the software for years without even using it to its full potential. At work, I was given a $100 budget to find a program to make flowcharts. I wrote up a tutorial on how to make flowcharts in Excel, which we already had, and asked for the $100. They never gave me the $100. Story 18. Saw a guy put $2,000 on a specific number on roulette. Not black or red, on a specific number. If it had hit, he would have been $70,000 richer. But, of course, it didn't. He didn't seem too angry about it, though, so I guess he was loaded. He just walked away like it was no big deal. Dude, this happens literally all the time in Vegas. Hang around tables long enough, and you'll see people put down the $70,000 instead of just $2,000. Story 19. A 4K TV for their PS4. Come on, 1080 is barely possible on those, and regular television is going to take at least another 5 years to get on that train. Oh my god, I want that 4K TV. I want. But I guess the only thing to watch would be that promo video they play on repeat on the floor model. Story 20. Bottle service in a Vegas nightclub. You spend $1,000 for a bottle of vodka and some crappy mixers. Your cocktail server makes the drinks so strong to the point they're unenjoyable, just so you'll run out faster and order more. If you're a group of guys, you have hosts bringing girls over to drink up your alcohol and then leave when you run out. Story 21. I saw someone once buy a first-class ticket on Air France from Paris to London. The guy spent something like $2,000 to fly 200 miles. Not to mention the fact that the Eurostar trains were directly below him and would get him to downtown London in half the time as the plane. I wish I could just ride a train to another country. It seems awesome. Story 22. I'm a roofing contractor, and the company I work for has a customer who has us put on a $50,000 plus temporary asphalt shingle roof on his house while he and his wife decided on what color slate they wanted for the permanent roof. All in all, they spent over $200,000 on their roof in a few months because they couldn't decide on a color. Story 23. My dad oversees various remodeling and construction. His company was doing a remodel of a woman's bathroom, and he was in charge of figuring out what materials she wanted to use. She immediately said, "What is the most expensive type of tile? I want that." He said she didn't even care what color it was or what it looked like. It cost her $10,000. Story 24. I watched some drunk butt wander up to a craps table in Vegas, plop down $7,500 in markers on a hard 8 bet at the craps table, lose on the next roll, and walk away looking like he had no idea he'd just lost. Chances are that money may have been insignificant to him. Story 25. Those wristbands, which were supposed to give you better balance, I was out with about 5 friends, and 3 of them bought it. My buddy bought 40 of them for like $2 each online. He sold them all at school for $10 a piece. Story 26. I watched my buddy blow about $500 at a strip club one night. The saddest part was he thought the dancer was really into him. She was into him, at least his pockets. Story 27. Not on the same scale as some of these, but my father went to Costco to buy AA batteries. He spent $500 and forgot the batteries. We don't let him go to Costco alone anymore. Story 28. Woman came into the 7-Eleven I work at, bought $1,700 worth of $20 scratch cards, scratched them all off, won about $100 back, complained how these things are rigged, and left. Well, they are. That's how gambling works. Story 29. $20 million on an SAP implementation that had to be scrapped. Oh God, our company is going through this right now. I hope we don't end up scrapping it. Story 30. I used to play cards with a Russian guy who spent $7,000 on his gold-plated Nokia. He was a weird and somewhat scary dude. His caller ID came up as Tina Turner. No idea why. That's a great investment. I hear Nokias last forever. Story 31. Oh, this guy in Paraguay in the middle of the street is selling 32GB cards for 75% of the prices of the shops around. I'll better buy one for everyone in my family since they're so cheap, and I can totally trust this guy I'll never see again. Story 32. An ex of mine bought a camper van on eBay for £2,000. He parked it on the street, and within a week it had been towed. He never bothered to get it back again. Story 33. Nicotine gum addict ignored the dentist's warning after having a $500 crown fitted. It came back out with the gum less than a day after being put in because they chewed gum on it. Story 34. I went down to the Atlantis Resort in the Bahamas a few years back, which itself was a waste of money. Someone bought a pair of regular rubber flip-flops for $65 at the gift shop. Story 35. I live in Dubai. I regularly see this sort of thing. People spend millions on all sorts of things. Mobile phone numbers, license plate numbers, phone covers, etc. But how much would you pay for your phone number to be 531-8008? A pretty penny, I would venture to guess. Story 36. Dollar draft night. Tons of IPAs and good beer, as well as your buds and colors for $1. Watch this kid order $3 PBR cans all night long. Story 37. The cancellation of 2 gas-fired power plants to save votes in an election. This was at the cost of $1.1 billion to all taxpayers in Ontario. Story 38. I witnessed someone spend their one and only inheritance of $250,000 in less than a year. Invested none of it. Knew he would, too. Story 39. A friend won €2,500 in online poker and played immediately after it 15 times slot machines, a €100, without winning anything. Story 40. The United States military throws money at contractors to do jobs that people in the military could do themselves. Story 41. Thousands of dollars at a strip club. By a guy who really didn't have to spend it. Not like the guy was Mayweather. Story 42. I saw a fella purchase a $120,000 bottle of champagne when I was in Hong Kong. Enough said, really. Story 43. 200,000 pounds on a pigeon. I know everyone has their hobbies, but pigeon racing is beyond me. Story 44. A kid in my English class has a $3,000 backpack. Don't ask me why. Please leave your stories in the comments. I'd love to make a video of them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.